Hello everybody and welcome to your every other day vlog with Libre with Andy. So today we're going to talk about inflation of the dollar and the minimum wage that is being proposed to be increased, and how that relates to Bitcoin, because we always have to bring it back to our favorite cryptocurrency. Let's a little bit of housekeeping first. Apologies in advance for the week and a half or so, few days that I will not be posting any videos the every other day vlog, and this is because I will be taking the bar next week. It's almost a full week thing. It's a let's see, it'll take place the 27th through the 27th through the 1st of March, and then after that I'll be flying back home to Laredo to see my family and spending some quality time with them, as I haven't seen them in a few months, and then I'll be back in Nebraska, where I will be studying in earnest for another test, and also be studying up on Bitcoin again, so I can become so I can recertify myself as a Bitcoin expert on the C4. It's a 4-word. Let's see. It starts with the letter C, and I forget what. And Crypto Consortium. Oh man, there's a name for it. I'll put a link on the description so you guys can check it out. But they're great. They're a great group, a great resource. I believe Andreas Simontonopoulos is one of the people that started that foundation, and a couple of other notables in the crypto space, so that people could feel comfortable receiving advice and Bitcoin education from people that do pass that certification exam and become licensed with C4. So anyway, now that that's out of the way, we'll get back to today's vlog, and that is inflation and the minimum wage. So one thing that I've noticed and understood about minimum wage is that it is required to be pushed up over time. So today we're at least I know Texas was between $7 and $9 was the minimum wage, and other states have their own variables of minimum wage that is required by law if you're going to be working full-time. I'm not sure if that also applies to part-time, but why this is important, why this matters, is because if you're going to continue pushing up the minimum wage standard between all states in the U.S., what is that illicitly or implicitly implying? I think that's too many adjectives there, or there's a word for what I'm using there. But anyway, the idea is that if you're continuously pushing up minimum wage, there's a reason for it, and what seems to be the most reasonable is that the dollar is going down in value, that the amount of dollars that you have are less and less effective for buying goods and services, and this is why minimum wage is constantly being pushed up. Otherwise, there would not be a need for minimum wage to be pushed up, because the bare minimum would be good enough for the majority of Americans. But we know that's not the case, and we know that cost of living has in fact been going up every decade or every generation or so. I believe the inflation rate is around 2% a year, and that would mean that within 5 years, that's 10% inflation. So things are going to cost 10% more. So $5, something that's worth $5 is now worth $5.50. $10 is now $10. Well, rather $11. I can do math. And what does that tell me is that the minimum wage being increased. I'm very curious to see how far up they push it. So in Texas, if it's between $7 and $9, I wonder what they're going to push it up to in order to catch up with inflation. Would I be surprised if they pinned the minimum wage way lower than is necessary to keep up with inflation? No, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. This is par for the course. Unfortunately, the government is not going to give us an equal share of the amount of, and of course I say this when in reality, businesses should not be told what minimum wage they should be giving their employees. And of course I don't mean that they should be paying the employees less, but the minimum wage is a bare minimum to keep up with inflation, which is not true. Paying an employee the bare minimum of minimum wage is not going to get you anywhere near the cost of living in your state at all. The minimum wage is actually a suggested minimum, as the word implies. It's a minimum base for wages. You should actually be paying your employees a lot more than minimum wage. If you're assuming that they're going to give your business their full time and attention, working full time, and not having to juggle several employment, several jobs in order to keep up with the cost of living. So this minimum wage supposed hike that's coming, is it going to be indicative of how bad inflation has really become? From what I've read and understood, we're going to be getting more rates, we're going to be getting more QE, so more money is going to be printed out of thin air in order to try to prop up our economy, which is, of course, problematic. Of course, it is an invisible tax, because we have not only the tax that we pay, but the fact that inflation is a thing, the fact that governments are allowed to, or we'll keep it specific to the U.S. The U.S. is allowed to print more money and deficit spend, which means we are the ones left holding the bag, which means the dollar is actually worth less. And this is why the government is forced to, or at least to keep the lowest the lowest socioeconomic tier of society happy, is by increasing the minimum wage. And of course, they are not happy. The lowest strata of the population in the U.S. is not happy whatsoever. I believe that they don't even have $1,000 in reserve should the proverbial shit hit the fan. They're in trouble. $1,000 is not even found in most lower socioeconomic citizens' coffers. They're in big trouble if they need to cough up $1,000. Usually get into debt for that, and we know what the debt hawks do. The pay, what are they called? The wage. Oh, there's a word for them. Wage lending? No, there's a word for it. But they end up putting ridiculous interest rates on payday loans. There you go. These payday loan sharks. They charge these poor and certainly needy people ridiculous interest rates to give them $1,000 for some sort of either medical or family emergency, which they can barely cover for $1,000. All of this to say that inflation is definitely theft. It is definitely a problem, and I, for one, am very happy that there is at least an asset class that is not tied to the dollar the way other asset classes are, and that is to say that the problem with the stock market, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is that one stock is given a dollar value. So the fact that one stock is worth so many dollars means that should the U.S. economic system be forced to finally pay the piper by any of the Asian countries that own our debt, what is that stock really going to be worth? What could we maybe value the stock in some other currency? Is that the benefit of? Is that maybe the contingency plan here? Is if I own one Tesla stock and it's worth around $300, the dollar is worth nothing, and therefore the Tesla stock is then worth a couple thousands of dollars because of inflation. Because inflation kicks in, would we be basing that stock in another currency? And of course, Bitcoin is pinned to multiple currencies, so we can quickly see in real time how currencies are faring compared to Bitcoin. But again, I'm much happier buying into into an economy that is not inflationary but deflationary, in that it entices saving, it benefits those who save as opposed to those who spend, and we are not beholden to arbitrary inflation measures. At least the idea here with Bitcoin, because the numbers of inflation are arbitrary to start with. So the number of Bitcoins that will ever be in existence was arbitrary. The 21 million is arbitrary, of course. The rate of inflation is, of course, arbitrary. But everybody that comes on to use Bitcoin is under agreement that none of those arbitrary starting points, those baselines for starting the cryptocurrency, will ever change. So yes, 21 million was arbitrary, but has it changed since the day it was started 10 years ago? Nope. The inflation rate, which is certainly also arbitrary, maybe arbitrary, but the baseline has not changed. The inflation rate will not be changing. Every 4 years we'll have a halvening, and that has been stable the last 10 years. Will it change? I hope not, because that is the reason Bitcoin is valuable today, is because everybody that comes on is under consensus that the rules that are running Bitcoin will not be changing. At least those baseline rules that make it that are the economic baseline points. As far as technicality or technical changes that will improve the use of Bitcoin, certainly bring those on, and we'll certainly use consensus to bring those on that make the most sense for the majority, as we already have. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what minimum wage gets bumped up to and what that will mean in terms of the true inflation rate. And as I've said, I'm pretty sure that the inflation rate will not be reflected in the minimum wage bump up. And I use the word bump literally, merely a bump. And that's not going to help much people. It's not going to help many people. So sorry to end on a glib note, and you're not going to hear from me for another week and a half, but I hope you can check out some of the podcasts that we've done recently. We are hoping to get a lot more coming online this year, now that I'm done with most of my schooling, and hopefully pass the bar on my first attempt. We'll see how that goes. They'll let me know in May. They're not sympathetic to my emotions, as they're going to make me wait 2 grueling months to see if all this work over the last 2 months was worthwhile. It is either way. Still experience, still lots of knowledge put in my head. So yeah, let's end this video. Please like if you like, please share with a friend, and please subscribe and check out our podcast. I'll put the link in the description below, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.